Hi everyone, it's Angelica Allen here. I am honored to be here with Jaya. Jaya is a writer and a teacher who has a beautiful story to share with us, and a powerful story. And this is why I wanted Jaya to share with us her story, because we have so much to learn from her. Yet, with all these struggles, she come across as calm and collected and full of peace, which is so beautiful. Jaya has just recently written a book called Warrior Journey to Self-Recovery, which she's going to talk to us a little bit more about as well today. Hi, Jaya, how are you?
Hi, Angelica. Thank you for having me on your show. So I'm so grateful.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
good.
Thank you so much for being here. So, Jai, why don't you start telling us a little bit more about your story and how you got here?
Sure. Um, okay, I'll start my journey from the beginning. As in, my parents, they decided that they wanted all their children to be educated, simply for the fact that they were illiterate. So it was their dream that their kids would be educated. So we were five siblings. I'm the youngest, and I've lost two siblings, my eldest sister and my brother, both to cancer in 2006 and 2012,
Wow.
respectively. Yes. And
Sorry, are you in India? So you grew up in
I'm
India,
in, I'm
born
in,
in India? Yes.
I'm from Pune and I'm from India. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so coming back to, it was mom who actually raised all of us single-handedly, simply because of the fact that dad, my father, I lost him when I was only 5 months old in a bizarre road accident. And in fact, my mom used to tell me that I had this connection with my dad because I used to coo to him every time he was around really loudly, and he would answer back. So we had that kind of connection, but unfortunately, I didn't have him in my life, so to speak. And so it was mom who raised us. Actually, in those days, when mom became a widow, the society was not really very kind, to widows. So she was sent back home. But she had her own dreams, her own, desires, and she was a very strong woman. And she thought to herself that I must fulfill my mine and my husband's dream of getting my children educated. So she came back to the city and sent us to good schools. So
Awesome.
I'm very grateful to her that I could learn to read and write, and therefore I'm speaking before you. Um, so the community that I come from, they are very conservative, and so it was all about arranged marriages. So, in fact, all my siblings had arranged marriages.
Mm-hmm.
My eldest sibling, my eldest sister was married, I think, when she was only 13 or 14. And my other sister was married when she was 18. We were all married young. So, when it came to my turn, mine was also an arranged marriage. And as young girls, we have our own rosy dreams about life and what it's going to be like. And so I was married and I moved to another city, and it was nothing that I had dreamt of or visualized. We were two people who were completely mismatched. And in India, when you get married, you marry the family as well. So
Meaning
here,
you have to go and live with them, you mean?
yeah, it's like a joint family where you have the brothers-in-law, the sisters-in-law, the mother-in-law, father-in-law, everybody, and they decide how you're supposed to behave and live your life. And so here it was the same. They were calling the shots, and I had no support really. So everything was criticized. The way I cooked, the way I dressed, the way I talked. So my
How old were
self-esteem
you, Jaya? Sorry.
was 22, almost 23, 22.
Wow. And
Yeah.
did I hear you say, so you married, was it a doctor?
Yes, he was a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so my self-esteem started, going down, and I kept feeling that I was not enough, and I'm not good enough, and I can't. Uh, uh, I just couldn't understand how people could criticize and judge you so easily, because I didn't come from that. My mother was very loving, and
Yeah.
she was, even though we grew up in a atmosphere which was again stilted when I was growing up, because there was no father figure. There was my sister's husband who was a guardian, and he was like Hitler as well. So so I grew in that atmosphere, but my mom's love was enough, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So here I suddenly was thrown into the situation where nobody cared about you. So it was like you were just the maid servant, as they said, to me on the first day of arriving in that house.
Wow.
And so I went through this kind of a lot of pain and torture, mental torture, and then physical abuse as well. Tremendous amount of physical abuse. And
And back then, was it easy for you to call your mom and say this is what's happening, or because also what I'm thinking is, if I go back to when I was 22, they are defining years when you're kind of growing up into adulthood, right? And if you're growing up in an environment where you were led to believe that you're not good enough, it's really difficult for you to stand up for yourself, right? Was it easy for you to just call your mom and say,
no, it wasn't in that sense, because today we have the mobile phone. Then it was the regular phone that this thing. So someone is always watching you, so you didn't
wow,
do that. And then, like, it was like she's always complaining to her parents. And but yes, I had my daughter right away. I had
all
her.
right,
And so she whenever he was a doctor, he never took care of the child even when she was sick. So I had to make these visits to Pune, to a doctor in Pune. So my mom used to ask me these questions, and I used to evade saying that, like, I'm having an unhappy life to begin with,
yeah,
because my guardian, that is my sister's husband, had instilled in us, like, one marriage and you go there and it's the rest of your life you have to spend it there. So that's the typical diktat
yeah.
which most Indian families follow, and I was no different. So I had to
Get on with
conform.
it. Just, yeah,
Yes.
just, yeah, deal with
But
it.
one we have a festival called Diwali, and one festival my brother came to visit, and he had seen these bruises on my face, and he was stunned, and he went back and he did convey to the family. And of course, my guardian, my brother-in-law, that is my sister's husband, said, "Oh no, she has to deal with it." And so, nothing was done.
Wow.
But my mom was very, very sad after that. And she kept thinking about me, and, probably she realized that I'm going through a lot of pain, so she could understand. And so when it became too much, like, I think after about 5, I even was forced to have an abortion, because they thought that I was carrying a female fetus again.
Oh, Jaya.
So yes, so that was a trauma again, which I carried with me. I'm sorry, I never knew that I would tear up
I
after
am,
so many
I
years.
am, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, because I feel it's so important for you to, share the reality of being a survivor of, domestic violence, and and abuse. And with the increasing in domestic violence these days all over the world, including in Australia, this is not something singular to India. I feel that it's so important for you to tell your story, and I'm so blessed that you said yes to coming here and to talk to my audience, because I know that there will be one person, two people out there, three people, four people, that they can listen to what you've been through, and then they can make some decisions for themselves in their own lives.
Yeah. In fact, Angelica, I wish that someone would have told me, like, if a person hits you once, he'll hit you again. And maybe, my whole mindset would have been different, and, I would have known better. But here I came from a joint family, so to speak, and, decisions were not taken instantly. And so I think 6 years lapsed before I was really abused, and I've lost my hearing, my left ear, almost 50%.
Wow.
And that's when my mom, she felt that she's going to lose me. And so she said, no, I'm not going to lose my child. And that's how I came back. So it was my mom who actually took the decision, to get me back.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that, because
Yes.
life changed. It didn't become hunky dory, because the as I told you, the community that I come from is very conservative, and so they didn't take it well, and the stigma of separation and then
Yeah.
divorce was they thought that I was starting a trend which is not welcome at all. So I was
Yeah.
ostracized by the whole community. In fact, I still feel it when I
Yeah.
meet up with some people. I sense that.
Hmm.
So maybe in that sense, I've always kept myself away to heal myself away from them, the
Yeah.
toxic environment. And so I came back, and because of the abuse, I used to faint quite often, and then I was hospitalized once. So it was then when one of the doctors came up to me and she said, "You might end up a vegetable if you don't, you know, um, do something about it. What is it that you like to do?" So I said, "I'm interested in reading and writing." So she said, "You need to keep your brain alive. Think about it, or you'll vegetate." So when she said vegetate, I was like, no, I'm not going to let that happen to me. So I went back to studies. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
I I went to do my master's in journalism. In fact, I remember I think I was the last candidate, uh, and luckily I got chosen. And so I started studying, and I had my little girl, my daughter, who was
Yeah.
just about 5, with me. So it was life took on a different meaning with the assignments,
Yeah.
deadlines, and taking care of my daughter, all
And were
that.
you in your community, or you had go back
No,
to
I,
live in
I stayed with my mother
your
and my
mom?
sister.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you
And
just go back to that transition from, when your mom said, enough is enough, like, did your mom physically went to where you lived and said, you're coming back with me, and that enough is enough, or
she
how?
sent my brother to fetch me from Bombay. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So and I got my daughter. My daughter was also, I must tell you that she was also uh, she was kept away from me at that period. In that period, they kind of hid her in different cities, and I got her back through the court. It was something called habeas corpus, and it was a grueling time because it was police and the courts and everything. And then once she was given back, then I came back to Pune. And
Oh, I'm so happy that your daughter was back to live with you and being raised by you. I'm really, really happy about that.
yeah. So then I once I finished my journalism, then I freelanced for a while with a couple of magazines because I had things to do. I had to take care of my daughter. I couldn't take
Yeah.
up a full-time job. And plus, I had to take the decision of taking a divorce. So, I had initiated that. And there were two cases going on simultaneously, one in the Pune Family Court and one in the Bombay Sessions Court for the abuse. And so it took me about 8 years
Wow.
to get freedom, so to speak. Um,
And there was also probably quite a courageous act from you, right? Because, you know, potentially some women wouldn't even do that in India because they don't want to go through these 8 years and they feel imprisoned by being married to this person who they don't want to be married to anymore, right?
Yes, when I look back and I did it all alone, Angelica. There was no one. My mom gave me moral support because she couldn't travel with me everywhere, and I had to be in the court. And so often I felt as if I was in fact not. I was not the victim. I was the accused, and
Wow.
the thing. It was a hard time. Yes. Looking back, it was, how did I do it? I think it was because of grace, God's
Okay.
grace. I strongly believe there is somebody much more powerful and much more than we can see. So that, it was like the universe had my back. Even though I went through the 8 years, I went back and forth, and I had a job at that point of time, a flexi job at a company where I edited the in-house journal,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a very kind boss. She
Okay.
was very loving and very encouraging. So I guess even though the pain was there, there was somebody to put that soothing balm and encourage
Wow.
you to go on in life. So she was an angel, and so I went through those 8 years, and I remember the judge telling me, "This guy is going to really drag it on. So what have you decided?" And so I said, I don't want alimony of any sort, but I do want child support.
Yeah.
And so he fixed an X amount. And I remember they were haggling, and he called them fishwives, and he said, "You're doing it for your child." And so that's how it
It's,
was. And the day he decided to get married, he gave me the divorce.
oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
basically, you know, even being a doctor and having the financial meanings to help you, even though he knew it was his own daughter, he didn't want to do that either.
No.
Wow. So what do you think it kept you going from, like, what kept you going in the worst moments? You know, if you go back to, you know, we all have had moments in our lives where we have been at really at the bottom of the cliff, and, you know, what do you think it kept you going?
um, as a young girl, I used to keep asking my mom as to who was I and where was I going and what was my role in life. So I guess I started going within, asking myself these questions. So initially, I started writing morning pages, and I used to all let the bilge come out, and whatever I felt, the pain and everything would come out. And then at some point, I started realizing that whatever I wrote, it came to pass during the day. Whatever my desires, my dreams, my feelings. So I thought, like, at that point, like, I needed to write more and learn more about myself. So I learned Reiki. I learned about crystals. I learned about meditation, and I prayed a lot. Prayed in the sense, I think at that point, yes, it was about 23 years ago, when I first stepped into Meherabad, the tomb of my master, Meher Baba.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point, you could say. Before the other defining moments in my life, this was the turning point which, gave me that sense that, yes, Jaya, you go forward, and I'm there, and you can do it. So it was complete surrender to him on my
Yeah.
part from the word go. And that's what gave me that strength. And of course, the resilience factor came from my mom, because she always told me that you have to reinvent and readapt to any situation that is thrown to you. Because I suppose, from her life, she was a widow at 28, 29.
Mm-hmm.
So she
She
raised
had
us
to.
and, dealt with whatever was there. So and I emulate her, in every
Yeah.
aspect. I used to ask her for advice, and I would always ask her to share all of her life stories, and, with my father and things like that. So I guess I got that strength
From her.
that from her, yes.
That's
And
beautiful.
that kept me going, yes, yes. And
And so when did you decide to write your book? So tell us a little bit more about your book.
yes, I'd love to. Um, so as I was telling you, um, personal growth became a big factor in my life, and so I kept learning, from different teachers. So um, at that point, it was, I think, about um, I lost my mom in 2016 to liver cirrhosis, and
Oh,
it was at that point that, that was the, I think, the worst year of my life. To lose someone who was your emotional anchor is, it's unbearable.
yeah.
So I went into deep grief, and it was only my master's grace which brought me out of it. And when I told myself, my mom could handle so many situations. Why can't I? And she would want me to not give up. So that brought me out of that situation. But I even went in for, I found a mentor. His name was Arfin. And so I went for his seminar, and he had a system in place, and he taught me some tools, and he said, no, you should not give up on your writing. If you were a writer earlier, you used to write. So that was when, I decided this, just after post mom, I wrote a book of poems called The White Rose, which was inspired by my master.
Mm-hmm.
And post, being with a mentor, I thought there was a big uh, gap, a block, which was not being erased. And post that, seminar and the program, I just decided that I remember Neil Donald Walsh. He saying that it's not about you; it's about impacting all the lives. So that's when I decided, okay, um, we all have stories,
Mm.
yes, and how many of us want to come out with it?
Yeah.
So I decided I'd be one of them. I'd come out and tell my story, so it could, bring about some change in women, who are in the similar situations that I was in,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, what were the tools that I used, and the changes that I brought, and the way I perceived things,
Mm.
and maybe they could, if I shared, it could, help them. So that's
Yeah.
the reason I decided to write it last year.
Yeah.
And I set a deadline for myself, December 31st.
Mm-hmm.
And so I completed the book by 31st December. And it was published this year in March. And of course, I didn't know what was, kept for us this year, 2020. But I remember last year, someone, a sannyasi from ISKCON, had said to me, like, sister, you've got to take care of yourself. And next year, is going to be really tough for all of us. So I had joked with him, why is there going to be a calamity or what? So he had said yes, and I had kind of brushed it aside because, um, I wanted to publish my book, and I wanted to launch it, and I had set a date, March 19th, and post that I was supposed to come to Queensland. Um,
Oh
uh,
wow.
yes, to Baba's Avatar's abode and, be at women's savas. Savas means, um, sitting with your master, even though
Okay.
he's not in the physical, like, you
Mm-hmm.
experience all that. And so it was women's service. I was so keen on attending and also making a presentation of my book. So all this was, planned, of course, as has other things. So with COVID happened, so I had to
Yeah.
cancel my book launch, even though I had paid for it, and I had to cancel my tickets. And yes, um, so then I was just sitting with this book, didn't know what to do with it, and we had to do all our chores ourselves every day.
Yeah.
We didn't have any help here, so I just went into that, and I was taking care of the home. And at that point of time, I also was part of a project which helped make food packets
Mm-hmm.
for the laborers and for the community which cannot afford to make the daily living. So I
Wow.
was part of that project. So this gentleman, he's from a cafe which I frequent very often. It's very close to my house. And he said, "Ma'am, what about your book?" And I said, "What about it?" He said, "Aren't you doing anything about it?" So I said, "No, I'm really not done anything." So he was the one who encouraged me, and he said, "No, we'll do it virtually." And so it was launched from his page.
Oh.
Yes, on Mother's Day.
Oh,
So
that's beautiful. Oh, that's beautiful that you had
yeah.
him encouraging you. I think so. What? So you mentioned
So these
like
are
the
all
book.
these angels. I call them angels.
Exactly. So now, if you go back to, you talked about so many things that you talk about on the book, obviously your journey, but you talk about the tools they use to self-heal. What are some of the things that you did to self-heal yourself?
Okay, the first thing I learned was to take ownership, to take responsibility. I stopped blaming the world.
Yeah.
Because I started going within. I found all the answers within, and intuition was something which I knew I had it, but I developed it further and honed it further because along with meditation, there are two halves which dance together.
Mm,
So, that's what I realized. And so I became more intuitive, and so healing processes. So I'm also, I told you earlier, I think I learned Reiki and I became a master in Reiki. And so I learned how to heal others, including myself,
yes.
and first myself and then others. And at that point of time, I used to go to hospitals where children had cancer, and I used to go to, but every time I went, a couple of children were missing, so it was very traumatic. And then I started doing long distance healing. And now, only when people come and ask me, they come home and they say, "Can you heal me for something?" Then I do it. Otherwise, I've kind of just stuck to meditation and writing
Mhm.
gratitude journal, which I think is like, I always did it earlier. I did it as morning pages, then I turned it into a gratitude journal. So I always thanked for the most minutest things. It
Yeah.
could be just a flower, or the sunrise. And so it's like a magic pill, I feel. And
Yeah.
that helped me cope with what the outside world was dealing.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Definitely, that's beautiful. So now, if you had somebody in front of you who has gone through the same trauma as you, or potentially now, something like you went through around the divorce, having a child, or domestic violence, or it could be like a horrible divorce, or any trauma that we I feel that we can get stuck, a little bit in that paralysis mode, right? Like, how can I get out of this situation? And how can I even, and like you said, it's not until we take responsibility that things start changing. What would you say to that person who is in that situation right now?
I can only draw from my own story. So what I did was I never gave up, and I never quit on myself at any point of time. There were dark moments, like where you felt like, the world should end or whatever, but I never went in there. in that space.
Mm.
So because I knew this life was very, very precious and it was beautiful despite. I always knew that from the time I was a young girl, I, always had those feelings that life is beautiful despite. And I am a person who has always been curious to learn and, to grow. And so in my journey, I learned a very important factor, which is called ROSE, the rate of self-evolution. So, it's very important that you grow, and if you're taking steps towards it, then you're on the right path. So the personal growth that I concentrated on, and I think it's my master's grace that he led me to, understand that. And I also learned yoga, things which, help discipline the mind and body. So I would say that we have the strength and we have the solace within us. And we need to find that equipoise within us. So
Yeah.
in order to deal with the outside world, and never, ever, ever quit on yourself.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
I learned to say that I'm enough. Um, uh, I went into a master class of this lady called Marissa.
Yeah, I've seen.
Marissa,
Yes, yeah.
Marissa, yeah.
Yeah.
And, where she talks about, telling yourself, and I actually have written on a mirror, I'm enough with lipstick.
Uh,
And I look at it every single morning when I wake up and, I say, yes,
yeah.
I am enough. And also there's a book by an Indian writer called Ravikant Kamal. I think it says, love yourself if your life depends on it, the
Yes.
book. And he has something called eye gazing. It's an exercise which I use regularly. I mean, we, it's not that everything is perfect, right?
Yeah.
We still have our flaws and we still have those holes which need to be filled with empathy and love. So this eye gazing exercise is about looking at yourself in the mirror, just at one eye, and saying, I love you.
Yeah.
And the more you say, we women are very hard on ourselves.
Yes.
It's very rare that we appreciate who we are and what we are all about.
Yes.
So I think that is required, that you love yourself. The more you love yourself, the more love you'll be able to give. And I think I start doing that in my journey. Uh,
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jaya. That is beautiful. And one last question. Who is Jaya today?
uh, Jaya today, I think she is a person who's not afraid of criticism or people's judgments. And she also is a person who can deal with whatever life is going to throw. I believe that life is like a beautiful painting that you can, paint with. You have lots of colors, and I'm a person who has always been spontaneous and curious. So I think I'd like to paint my life that way.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Beautiful
Thank you
picture.
so much. And Jaya, so if I put the link below of your book, I will tag you in on our posts.
Oh, yes.
People can awesome. So they can buy this on Amazon.
Amazon and Kindle.
Perfect. And if they want
Kindle as well.
Kindle as well, awesome. And they can reach out to you via Facebook.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Via
So
Facebook and
yeah.
my email. I'll send you my email. I think you have my email. You can put that in the link below.
Awesome. Perfect.
They can write to me. Yeah, they can write to me, and in whatever way I can, help. Because today I'm a life coach as well, and I help rewire people's thinking. My area is self-relationship. So people who have had breakups or who are finding themselves in a situation which is traumatic. So I help them to realize that they have it all within them, and they can do it. They've got this.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jaya. Thanks so
Thank
much for
you.
being here. Thank you
Thank
so much for sharing your story. It's been a beautiful, I know, for me to be here with you. And I really appreciate you sharing your story with all your heart with us.
Thank you. Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
Take care.